Channel open. Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on June 28th, 2019, and is current through the end of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, so beware of spoilers. All right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
WeeklyTrek is a 30-minute news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in a new golden age of Star Trek. There are 5 television shows at some point in production, possibly more on the way, and enough merchandise to fill the Bajoran wormhole. So stick with me, and I'll help you sort the real facts from a lot of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. But I can't do this alone, and my guest this week is the co-host of the fabulous Shore Leave podcast, also on the Tricorder Transmissions. It's Marina Kravchuk. Marina, welcome to WeeklyTrek.
Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting. That's my first time doing the WeeklyTrek.
Awesome. Well, I am super thrilled to have you, and we are now... 31 days from the start of STLV. So who better than the queen of STLV herself, Marina Kravchuk, to have on my little podcast?
Remember, you're the queen. This is super excited. I'm so stoked. Somehow the year just ran away from us and we're a month away.
Totally.
Actually, exactly a month and less than a day until I'm flying out. Together with my sister. We're leaving for Vegas, so Vegas beckons.
It sure does. Well, Marina, I ask my guests this question every week, but I want to know something that's got you feeling good about Star Trek at the moment. What's got you moving at Warp 10?
Well, that's exactly what we're talking about at the moment. STLV, I'm kind of basically, I have my packing list ready. I am not packing yet because it would be pretty weird to be all packed up a whole month in advance. Probably going to do it a little bit closer, maybe like in 2.5 weeks or something like that. But that's basically it. I usually create my own spreadsheets because I'm a spreadsheet person. So I'm full speed ahead, basically, all in preparation for STLV, looking at everything that we know so far, the events, the guests. It's going to be another great convention, and I cannot wait.
Yeah, honestly, that's what I'm feeling good about Star Trek this week, too. I mean, it is 1 month away. A month from now, I will be in Vegas. I'm flying out a few days early. So I'm very excited. And as you say, great guest list so far. Possible we'll still get a few more announcements. I mean, last year they announced the full regular cast for Star Trek Discovery within a month of the convention. I think it was maybe only 2 or 3 weeks out.
Maybe even less. As a matter of fact, the schedule release ran late precisely because they were behind. The Discovery cast was only announced after San Diego Comic-Con, so everything got pushed. As far as I know, and they haven't updated the page in a little bit, especially with the guests. I know Robert Beltran actually posted on his Twitter that he's coming, but I don't see him on the page yet. So they will definitely be updating. And I have a strange sensation. I don't know, especially considering what happened last year. I have a feeling that there will be more stuff coming after San Diego, because that seems to be like the crux of the year when all the big announcements or unusual things seem to happen. So we shall see. I'm kind of expecting more information to arrive in this next 4 weeks as far as what else we can expect. As for now, like, I am very pleased with the guest list, and what is rather unusual, I think that's a pretty big push, both, I suppose, on creation and CBS's side. We have quite a few scientists coming this year. I mean, we have 20 plus actual real life scientists who are going to be doing, science and Star Trek panels during the convention. So that's extremely exciting.
Yeah, that's great, including some former guests of the Tricorder Transmission shows, like Dr. Erin McDonald, who was on Trek Profiles, like Dr. Mohammed Noor, who was on Disco Trek and also Trek Profiles. Yeah, super exciting that they have decided to feature so many scientists on the guest list this year. And that, I think that also kind of indicates that we can look forward to some really exciting scientific programming, sort of real science at the convention. And a lot of the folks they've announced too are also huge Star Trek fans. So it'll be nice to sort of get that intersection between the real science and the science fiction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun. And you're right. STLV starts on a Wednesday. 10 days before that is San Diego Comic-Con. CBS has not yet announced what their San Diego Comic-Con convention schedule is, but obviously we're anticipating that there will be some kind of Star Trek panel, and we're also anticipating that it's a panel at which we'll probably learn a decent amount about Star Trek Picard. When Discovery premiered 2 years ago, they released the first trailer at San Diego Comic-Con, and then they did have a few panels at STLV prior to the premiere of Discovery of discussing the show. They had a few of the actors come by, they had a few of the writers come by, and they had a really fabulous presentation from Neville Page and Glenn Hetrick that took up most of the first day. So it is possible that CBS will kind of roll out that same kind of red carpet for Star Trek Picard, because it's kind of right in the sort of same time frame for it. But obviously none of that's been announced yet. And I think you're right. You know, it's probably the kind of thing that we won't really learn about, maybe not even until after San Diego Comic-Con. So it could be as close as a week out.
Absolutely. And who knows, considering how many Star Trek things are cooking out there, as we all know. It could be anything. I mean, chances are maybe they will pause on Picard and something else will be announced at STLV like last year. Maybe we'll get the first dips, and perhaps something else would be discussed, you know, like the lower decks or anything about the any of the animated series. But bottom line, at this point, I'm kind of excited about San Diego, even though I'm not going to San Diego. But I'm just looking for it as sort of like, okay, I anticipate the explosion of news around that time,
right,
of the month.
I want my full Picard trailer. That's what I want. I want 2.5 minutes of footage from this show to learn more about it. I want to find out names of characters in the cast who aren't Jean-Luc Picard. And I'd love to see some early animation from Lower Decks, and maybe learn the name of the Netflix show. Like, that would be, I think, for me, that would be a home run for San Diego Comic-Con this year.
Things are gearing up. I mean, let's face it, between San Diego and New York Comic-Con are the two tentpole events of the year. So I think from mid-July until the end of the year, when the Picard show is presumably premiering, I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty intense half a year with lots of Trek.
Agreed. And I am so excited. Well, with that, let's turn to the week's top stories.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
So our first story this week is thanks to some internet sleuths who found the Instagram account for a director called Mark Pellington, who had posted some Instagram pictures of him being a director for a Star Trek short trek. And one of the pictures, very interestingly, is of Mark with Ethan Peck and Rebecca Romaine. And the other picture is a picture of a clapperboard, says Star Trek Discovery, it has the name Chaos Theory on it. So I think from that, we can pretty reliably assume that one of the short treks that's coming will be a short trek featuring Ethan Peck as Spock and Rebecca Romaine as Number One. Some sites have speculated that the name of the short trek is Chaos Theory, but because that was the name on the clapperboard, but it's entirely possible that that's actually just the working title for the production while they were shooting. Our second story is about how Michael Chabon has been named as the showrunner for Star Trek Picard, but buried in that press release, it indicated that he had written 2 short treks, one Calypso, which obviously we've all seen and many people loved, and also a second one, Q&A, which we don't know anything about. And how does this connect to Mark Pellington and him shooting this short trek? Well, in one of the captions for one of the pictures, one of the hashtags was #Chabon. So presumably that means that Mark was filming a Michael Chabon written short trek, in which case the name could in fact be Q&A rather than Chaos Theory. But none of this has been formally announced by CBS, but it is a pretty good bet that we have a short trek coming with Spock and with Number One. Marina, how are you feeling about that?
I'm thrilled. The second season of Discovery certainly brought us this trio. Well, I'm going to mention the Ensign Mount, of course, because Captain Pike is something else. But besides him, Ethan Peck has done a tremendous job as Spock. I was weary when they announced, because my first, sort of like, okay, we have Spock again. But he really blew it out of the water. His Spock is Spock. He's now part of this whole thing. So, of course, I'm sure I've read somewhere that Kurtzman was asked, if we're going to see Spock again. And, we got ambiguous answers in response. Seeing that there is this potential that he will be back is just, I'm very thrilled about it. I want to see more of his Spock. And, of course, Rebecca Romaine. It was a pretty big splash when they announced that she's going to be playing Number One. And then we actually barely saw her in the second season. There were only a couple of, featured scenes where you kind of you get the taste and you want more. So I'm kind of hoping that even with a short track, we are talking about 15 minutes, but we're going to get more of a story, something happening. I am very curious to see what it's going to be. Is it going to be sort of like this prequel, and I'm making quotation marks here, sort of like what happens before the events in the second season of Discovery? Or is this something that happens after, once Discovery has gone on into the future. So that's it's wonderful. I'm glad to see them brought back. I'm glad to see that the powers that be actually seem to be soaking in fans' attitudes, because I'm pretty sure I speak for a lot of fans that a lot of people were very excited about these 3 new entities that we have now as part of the franchise.
Yeah, they did absolutely amazing, and I'm so happy that we are definitely getting more of them. My theory last week, which I guess has turned out to be true, is that the short treks, at least some of them, would focus on the 23rd century, and clearly that has turned out to be the case, at least for this one. My guess would be it's set after the events of Star Trek Discovery Season 2. It seems to me like there is potentially some work to be done to link the Discovery Season 3 with Section 31 Season 1 and, some of the kind of orphan characters, which, Spock and Number One aren't necessarily in that category, but Tyler certainly is, L'Rell certainly is. So I'd be interested to see what the remainder of these short treks look like. Are they kind of 32nd century short treks, or are they 23rd century short treks? But this is super exciting.
Yeah, I suspect that they're going to have another one of those. Like, let's face it, out of the 4 first ones, it was quite a spread.
Oh, yeah.
Henry Mudd was basically a standalone. Calypso was so out there. And, are there connections to what's going to happen in the 3rd season? Are there not? It's all debatable and open to interpretation. So it's a wonderful thing that they do with short treks. It's like it's like a film lab. You can experiment. So I'm sure we're going to have another spread where it's going to be probably something that's just out there, a completely unrelated thing, something that may have a character that will be perhaps appearing sometime in this, Discovery Season 3, like we had with the name of the characters, unfortunately, my name. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I think. It's going to be probably similar, very diverse offering.
Yeah, and hopefully we've managed to sleuth out what one of them is about. It's clear that they're filming right now. And that also potentially indicates they could come sooner than we expected also. If they're filming right now, they'll potentially be ready for the fall. So it's possible we will get the short treks back on even before Picard Season 3 goes on the air. So that's very exciting. And speaking of Picard, we had an announcement this week on a showrunner for the show, which will be Michael Chabon. So interestingly, when the show was first announced, there was no kind of formal showrunner announced. There were a number of executive producers, Alex Kurtzman, Heather Caden, who are the sort of executive producers for all of these shows, James Duffy. Michael Chabon was announced as an executive producer, but there had been this conversation about how, it was sort of a team of equals with the writers and there wasn't a formal showrunner. They seem to have made the decision now to have adopted a formal showrunner, and that is Michael Chabon. We know that the show has filmed at least 4 episodes. And I think Chabon is a really, really intriguing choice for showrunner, and actually quite an exciting one. He doesn't have a huge amount of television or movie production experience under his belt, but as a storyteller, he is a Pulitzer Prize winning author, and, his books are beloved by many. And it was very, very exciting when they first announced that he was joining the writer's room for Picard. And if you followed him on Instagram at all, his sense of excitement about the show, about the character, is palpable. He will sort of put up these very cryptic pictures, sometimes even just a black screen in which he then puts some cryptic comment. But it's clear how excited he is about this. And so it's very, very exciting that somebody who clearly has such a passion for the Star Trek universe has been elevated to that position. And it's very encouraging, I think, for what this show is going to be when it hits the air. A little strange, admittedly, that they've picked a showrunner after presumably they're filming either episode 5, potentially even episode 6 at this point, but certainly episode 5, because we know Frakes did 4 and he's finished. So a little strange they've picked a showrunner halfway through the season, but I wouldn't necessarily read too much into that. I certainly wouldn't read into it to mean that Alex Kurtzman has been fired, as many of the YouTube pirates have been spreading around. But this seems pretty encouraging, certainly from, if we were going to pick a showrunner, I think Chabon would be a good choice. Don't you think, Marina?
Absolutely. I think he has great potential. Besides, as you said, he's a storyteller. So if anything, he has that skill, that gift, behind what he does. In addition, I've read the interviews with him where he said, this is something that's my way of thinking about the world. Star Trek is part of it. He's a fan. So he certainly, I presume that he has pretty good grasp of what the franchise has created. So it's exciting. It's exciting to see what he does with it. Perhaps they picked somebody so unusual perhaps for the role precisely because he wasn't just mired in doing television and being the typical showrunner. So we shall see. I've really enjoyed his short track Calypso. I thought it was a wonderful sort of like this interesting Star Trek story that was completely out there. That was something very new.
Yeah, it was very new and very out there and very exciting for Star Trek to have taken those kinds of risks. And I hope that, those kinds of sort of storytelling innovations are the kind of things that he will kind of help bring to Picard as well. So this is exciting news. The press release, announced he was a showrunner. Other than that, it didn't really tell us anything. So there's not a huge amount more to talk about. But this is, just another exciting development for a show that has filmed at least 4 episodes. And we're feeling pretty good about seeing more of at San Diego Comic-Con and seeing more by the end of the year. So we seem to talk about Picard every week, which is amazing. And I'm sure there'll be plenty to talk about in the weeks ahead.
Yes. And I'm sure we will hear probably more as far as this whole thing with the selection of a showrunner once the show actually premieres and because between the PR and the press, I'm sure a lot of questions will be asked and hopefully will be answered.
Well, and if there's one thing about the history of Star Trek, it's that the truth will eventually out, right?
Exactly.
We found out about all the behind the scenes machinations for the previous Star Treks and who hated each other and who got who fired. And I'm sure the same will be true for Discovery's rather turbulent production history, and maybe if there's a story behind the Picard show's production history as well, I'm sure eventually we will find out all of the juicy gossip. But in this case, it could just be as simple as they decided the model they were working on wasn't working and they decided they needed to elevate someone to be the day-to-day showrunner. Because Kurtzman has kind of been pulling back from his day-to-day duties on the show. He elevated Michelle Paradise to co-executive producer for Star Trek Discovery because he has 5 shows to look after.
I was about to say exactly the same thing. There's far too many things to keep track of. He can't do it all by himself. So he's basically like a modern Rick Berman. He's in charge of the franchise, but then day-to-day stuff is done by somebody else. And in this case, it's Michael Chabon.
That's exactly right. So we're turning from the shows to the merchandise. Last week, we talked a little bit about some of the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive merchandise, and we had a new announcement for another exclusive San Diego Comic-Con product from Diamond Select Toys, the longtime Star Trek licensee of action figures and the ship models. Their latest model, the Enterprise C, which has been in production for quite some time. There will be a version of the Enterprise C available as an exclusive San Diego Comic-Con release. This will not be the Enterprise C as the kind of retail release that we're still expecting will be with the correct paint scheme. This Enterprise C is painted gold as an homage to the Star Trek The Next Generation observation lounge where you had the gold starships up on the wall. So it's pretty interesting. It's great to see the model is in a shape where they feel like they're ready to kind of get it out there, even in a slightly modified form. It will retail at San Diego Comic-Con for $60. They're not making all that many of them. So if this is something you're interested in, I would highly encourage you to find someone who's going to SDCC and get them to pick up one for you. We don't know when the main version will be released, because Diamond Select tends to really take their time with these products, and sometimes it can take several years for them to hit the market. But this is a good sign that it's getting to the place where it is coming soon. Personally, I think I'm more interested in the regular paint scheme version of the Enterprise C than I am in an all-gold exclusive, but this is quite a bit better than the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive they had either last year or the year before, which was an orange Enterprise motion picture refit, which was supposed to be the destroyed Enterprise from the Search for Spock, even though it didn't make any sense because the saucer was whole and the ship didn't go into the atmosphere. It had lost half its saucer. But anyway, it was a terrible product and everybody hated it. This is a lot better. Marina, is this the kind of thing you think you'll be adding to your collection?
Definitely not, simply because, first and foremost, because I actually ran out of space for models. My Eagle Moss collection is right now, I am forced to live it in boxes and just kind of pile them up in the corner. So at this point, adding yet another ship model, however it looks, whichever ship it is unfortunately simply physically not visible. Generally speaking, I like the way it looks. It does kind of like, you look at it, the first thought is like, oh, it's like you broke your little ships. It's like the Picard ships. But at the same time, I do prefer more realistic look to the ships as well. So yeah, if it were a real ambassador's class, with the proper paint, it probably would have caught my eye stronger. But no, not exactly. I think I would be probably more interested in Emperor Georgiou's knife rather than something like this. At least the other one is practical and I can use it. So at this point, so far there haven't been actually any exclusives that I'll be like, oh, I'm dying to get it. We shall see what else they're going to offer, because I'm sure there's going to be more stuff coming up. Again, kind of circling back to that thing, San Diego's coming up, New York Comic Con's coming up. There's got to be more exclusives.
Absolutely, yeah. The Giorgio Icon Heroes Mirror Universe Dagger letter opener is pretty cool. Of all the ones that I've seen so far, I think that's the one that has intrigued me the most. And then lastly, for merchandise this week, FanSets, the licensee that has made a really quite fabulous collection of Star Trek pins, has been in the process this week of rolling out the announcement for their new Master Pin set, which will debut at Star Trek Las Vegas in just 31 days from now. Over the last couple of years, they've debuted these master sets, one last year for the anniversary of Deep Space Nine, one the year before for the anniversary of The Next Generation. This year, because we don't have a major show anniversary, the pin collection is actually going to be the Women of Star Trek. And it's this really cool collection of 10 pins featuring some of the major female characters from the Star Trek franchise. They have selected a set of characters from every single show is represented. At this point, we're recording. I think there are 2 left still to announce, so we don't quite know what the whole set is. They've been doing daily announcements, but the ones that we've seen so far are super, super cool. Marina, why don't you walk us through who we've got and tell me who's your favorite and which you're planning on buying?
Well, I'm going to, first of all, give you a little bit more information because I've been basically keeping track of FanSets, both the Facebook and their Twitter feed, because people are very, very excited about this particular master set. And so little bits and pieces of information have been trickling down from FanSets crew, and it's very exciting. So technically, this is not the full set. This is just the series 1, the first wave. The actual master set is going to be much larger. Somebody mentioned that are you going to go up to like 50? And the answer was maybe. So there will definitely be more pins coming. And actually, if I can give the shout out to our friends Bill and Dan at Trek Geeks, if you listen to one of their episodes, they had Lou from FanSets talking about this set. So this is very exciting. Listen in as well, because there's more information there. So this first series is going to be just 10 pins with glitter in the background. So this sort of a trademark glitter that if you've seen the master sets from previous years, something that the FanSets is very proud of, and it looks tremendous. It's going to be these 10 pins. The first pin literally just says the Women of Star Trek, and the other 9, as you said, Alex, are being announced this week. So far, they have announced Dr. Crusher. We have Uhura, we have Kira, we have Janeway, we have T'Pol, and we have Michael Burnham. And the one that was announced earlier today was Counselor Troy. So 2 more to go. My information is one of the remaining ones is going to be a movie character, and the remaining one is be a guest star. So both are not... They're done with the regulars for this particular series. So those folks were like, well, I would like to have Dax, and what happened to Savick or something else. These characters will show up at some point because there will be more waves, more pins. So expect more wonderful things from FanSets. My favorite is, well, because she is my favorite character, is Captain Janeway. And you got to take a look at the artwork, because FanSets does have a fantastic artwork person or artwork department. These pins look fantastic, and I cannot wait. So I am definitely getting this master set. This first 10 pins, they will be presented on the background with the border at STLV. There will be an 11th pin that will be an STLV exclusive. So far, no information who, what. They're very tight-lipped. It's a secret. As I said, it is STLV exclusive. Whatever, I suppose, remaining glitter sets will be available online after that. And then sometime in the fall, presumably, they will have non-glitter single pin versions from this wave available for purchase. So for those folks who don't want to get the entire pin set, the first wave, because they really want just, say Counselor Troy, you will certainly have an opportunity to get one. It's just going to be basically same artwork, just will not have the glitter in it.
Very, very exciting. And you're right. The art for these, I highly recommend you go check out the FanSets social media feed in order to see these pins, because it's not just the characters. They've sort of built in elements of the ships and the rank pips and the iconography around the character as well. So they're actually these really, really cool little pieces, and very exciting that will be the set for STLV this year.
I'm really looking forward to it. FanSets is always a must stop on the preview night before the convention actually starts. So I'm sure my wallet will hate me again.
Yeah, I do find myself coming back from STLV every year with a couple more pins on my convention bag. All right, we have talked about the facts, and now let's speculate on what's going to happen in the future of Star Trek.
You make some very good points, Captain. But it's still all speculation and theory.
So each week, I and my guests are going to give you a theory or a wish we're nurturing about the future of the franchise. So, Marina, let's hear your theory for this week.
Theory. It's not so much a theory as a deliberation. There's something that Alex Kurtzman mentioned when he was asked about, well, are we going to see Spock again on season 3? And he said, well, it's really not realistic seeing that Discovery has jumped so much, so far away in the future. And it got me thinking that if indeed we're going to be seeing pretty much, that's it. Discovery's gone to the future, and perhaps what we saw in Calypso does come to pass, where that's it, that the ship is just gone. I keep thinking, well, we do have Section 31 series coming, so it's sort of like a known thing that we will have Emperor Georgiou, the Agent Georgiou, that's going to be part of it. So I'm kind of thinking there's got to be something's going to happen where I don't know if the entire crew will make it back without the ship, back into our time, I mean, or somehow, somewhere, whatever truths, somehow at least she will make it back, and then we will actually see what's going to be happening, her adventures as part of Section 31. So that's kind of like my main thought once I've read that piece of information from Alex Kurtzman's podcast appearance.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. And actually, it ties in pretty closely with my theory as well, which is about Calypso. Because according to Calypso, the Discovery had been abandoned 1,000 years ago, or 900 years, or however long it was supposed to have been. And everybody sort of assumed from that meant that they were kind of counting up from the 23rd century. So that gets you to the sort of 32nd century by doing that. And that therefore, when the Discovery jumped 950 years into the future, it ended up in more or less the same time frame that Calypso was set in. But there's actually nothing that says that, especially with the ship itself having moved 1,000 years into the future, that Calypso couldn't actually be set 2,000 years in the future, and that, Discovery will happen, and at some point, Discovery, the ship itself, will be abandoned, and it will then remain in place for another 1,000 years, because the relationship between Calypso and our timeline is really only established by that one line that Zora gives to say, how long she's been waiting there. All the other details are absent, which makes me think that it's entirely possible. So people have therefore been thinking about, well, are the Draish who were mentioned in Calypso going to play a role in Discovery Season 3? I think the answer is not necessarily, because it's not necessarily for certain that Calypso itself takes place in the same time frame. And to your point, yeah, I mean, it does seem pretty likely that a Section 31 show is not going to be a 32nd century Section 31 show. It's going to be a 23rd century Section 31 show, because that's kind of the direction the story for Section 31 in Discovery Season 2 has been pushing in. In the final few scenes of Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2, they make Tyler the head of Section 31, and it would be really nice to see kind of, how that story plays out. And Georgiou is clearly going to play a part in that. And so, yeah, I mean, she went into the future with the Discovery, but I think it's pretty unlikely she stays there. The question then becomes, who else moves around the timeline with her? Is it the whole crew? Is it just her? I think it's very exciting. And my guess is that a big subplot of Discovery Season 3 will have to do with that. And that by the end of Season 3, Georgiou will be where she needs to be for that show. And the question will be, did she bring anybody with her?
Yeah. So I cannot wait. It's been a wonderful way to guess, when Season 1 was premiering, I tried to kind of like, okay, I have my own ideas and this proved true. And then at some point I realized I have been surprised by the showrunners, by the writers. They threw in so many things that I'm like, I didn't even consider this, or you really took me for a spin, and everything would happen with Culber, and on and on and on. So at this point, it's just like, I wouldn't even consider the theory. It's just something that kept poking in my mind once I read that. I'm like, well, I guess they are indeed keeping Discovery out there somewhere in time. So how does that connect with everything else that we know that's going to happen with Section 31? So we shall see.
We certainly will. And Discovery should now be, we are probably just a couple of weeks away from the show going back in front of the cameras to film season 3. So it's only a matter of time before we start to learn a bit more about what that season is going to be about. I doubt we'll learn anything at San Diego Comic-Con, but New York Comic-Con, I think, is probably a pretty good bet for us to start getting some information about what Discovery season 3 is going to be. And it is so exciting.
Absolutely. I already have my, well, it hasn't arrived yet, but I did buy a ticket for New York Comic Con. Who knows, maybe I'll get lucky this year and actually manage to get into a panel. Not, we're all going to listen in, because I'm sure, thank goodness for social media in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Last year, they live streamed the Discovery panel, so I got the chance to watch it, which was the only way I could have watched it, because I think I was in Denver that weekend. So nowhere near New York. Do you have a theory or wish for Discovery or the future of the franchise that you'd like to share? Tweet them to me at WeeklyTrek, and I might feature your theory in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of WeeklyTrek. Thank you so much to my guest, Marina, for joining me today. Marina, how can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
Best way publicly would be via Twitter. I'm at Dracorex, DRAKKOREX. As you mentioned in the beginning, I co-host Shoreleaf, which it's the same thing. You can reach out at Shoreleaf on Twitter. I am on Facebook, but that's usually reserved for the friends. However, if somebody wants to send me a message, you're welcome to it. And so, as I said, the best way is Twitter.
And you can find this show on Twitter at WeeklyTrek and me at Alexander T. Perry. And if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And please check out some of the other great shows on the Tricorder Transmissions. And if you like our shows, please also consider becoming a Patreon of Tricorder, which you can find at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And lastly, if you're looking for Star Trek news on the internet, I hope you will turn to trekcore.com. Well, thank you, Marina. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next week, live long and prosper.